You will be shocked to discover the truth about the face and skin color of Jesus. Was Jesus really as we have come to know him? The letter that Pilate wrote to Roman Emperor Tiberius about Jesus contains astonishing details about his appearance, details that aren't even mentioned in the Gospels. In this letter, Pilate also talks about Jesus' miracles, his trial, crucifixion, and, believe it or not, his resurrection. But what exactly does this letter say? What could Pilate have told the emperor about the resurrection of the Son of God and his physical appearance? Pilate begins his letter by saying, "Greetings, Majesty. The recent events in my province have been so astonishing that I feel compelled to recount everything in detail, as I believe these occurrences may impact the future of our empire." He goes on to describe his frustrations with the people of Judea, stating that the region was difficult to control due to constant unrest. Pilate recounts his early interactions with the high priest and his officials, noting their disrespect and deceit, which led him to believe they opposed the Romans. Pilate continues, saying, "Among the various rumors I have heard, one in particular caught my attention. They spoke of a young man in Galilee who was teaching a new doctrine in the name of a God who had sent him. At first, I thought he might be trying to influence the people against us, but I quickly realized that wasn't the case." Jesus of Nazareth seemed to be more sympathetic to the Romans than to the Jews. One day, Pilate witnessed Jesus speaking to a crowd in a calm, serene manner. Pilate's secretary, who was loyal to him and spoke Hebrew fluently, was tasked with listening to Jesus' words. He reported that Jesus' teachings were full of wisdom, unlike anything Pilate had heard from other philosophers. Pilate noted that Jesus was not an agitator and offered him protection, believing that it was unjust to arrest or exile him. However, Pilate's freedom of action angered the wealthier Jews, who saw Jesus as a threat. Jesus was known for criticizing them harshly, calling them serpents and accusing them of hypocrisy. Despite this, Pilate allowed Jesus to continue teaching, as he believed in justice and the importance of free speech. Pilate received constant complaints about Jesus' boldness, with some warning that he could be stoned, as was customary for those who claimed to be prophets. Pilate then decided to meet with Jesus directly. When Jesus arrived at the praetorium, Pilate was struck by his calm demeanor. He felt a sense of awe and unease. Despite his initial hesitation, Pilate praised Jesus for his wisdom and for the peacefulness of his teachings. However, Pilate also warned Jesus that his words could incite the people to violence, which would force him to act. Jesus responded with a cryptic message about the future, suggesting that his blood would be shed but not Pilate's. Pilate, moved by Jesus' wisdom, offered his protection, but Jesus declined, stating that no refuge would be available for him when the time came. Pilate, recognizing the growing tension, reluctantly issued a warning to Jesus about the dangers he faced from his enemies. He urged Jesus to be cautious, but Jesus remained serene, saying that he had come to bring peace and love, not disturbance. Pilate was left with a sense of unease as Jesus departed. As Passover approached, Jerusalem became more volatile. Pilate faced mounting pressure from various factions, including the Herodians, Sadducees, and Pharisees, all united in their desire to eliminate Jesus. Despite his internal conflict, Pilate found himself unable to prevent Jesus' arrest, as the people were shouting for his crucifixion. Despite his reluctance, Pilate was forced to sentence Jesus to death after being pressured by the high priests and the people. Herod, who had initially hesitated to act, eventually aligned himself with Jesus' enemies. Pilate, facing growing unrest in Jerusalem and a lack of support from his superiors, felt trapped. He sent Jesus to Herod for judgment, but Herod sent him back, leaving Pilate with no choice but to pass judgment himself. Pilate's palace became a fortress as the city descended into chaos. Pilate was warned by a soothsayer of the consequences of executing Jesus, but he remained under intense pressure from the Jewish leaders and the people. Pilate's letter ends with a reflection on the events that had unfolded, acknowledging the role he had played in Jesus' death. He recognized that the situation was beyond his control and that the fate of Jesus was part of a greater plan that he could not fully understand. Mourning virgin, if you do not heed your wife's warnings, a great misfortune awaits you. Fear the curse of the Roman Senate, fear the thrones of Caesar. The marble steps of the praetorium trembled as they brought Jesus back to me. I asked the crowd what they wanted, and they unanimously demanded his death. What crime has he committed? I asked. They accused him of blasphemy, prophesying the temple's destruction, and declaring himself the Messiah. Despite explaining that Roman law couldn't sentence him to death, the crowd cried, "Crucify him." In a desperate attempt to save him, I suggested releasing him as part of the Passover tradition. Still, they rejected it. I ordered Jesus to be flogged, hoping to quell their anger, but it only fueled their hatred. Washing my hands before the crowd, I declared Jesus innocent of any crime deserving death, yet his fate was sealed. The mob's fury was unlike anything I had seen in Pannonia or the Forum. As the day darkened, it reminded me of Julius Caesar's death on the Ides of March. Jesus was led to Calvary, surrounded by chaos. The city felt deserted, filled only with an air of desolation. I watched from the praetorium, feeling the weight of witnessing a divine tragedy. The heavens and earth seemed to mourn, with black clouds and earthquakes signaling something extraordinary. Dionysius the Patriarch reportedly exclaimed, "Either the Creator is suffering, or the universe is falling apart." After the crucifixion, the somber crowd dispersed. Joseph of Arimathea requested permission to bury Jesus, which I granted. Days later, the tomb was found empty, and rumors spread that Jesus had risen, creating more turmoil. Jewish priests accused the disciples of stealing the body, but I had ordered a guard to secure the tomb. When I questioned the soldiers, they described seeing an enchanting light, heavenly music, and an earthquake. Overwhelmed, they fainted and awoke to find the tomb empty. The soldiers claimed the priests bribed them to spread a false narrative about the disciples stealing the body. Some priests privately believed Jesus wasn't an ordinary man, hinting at his divine origins. Witnesses recounted his miracles, turning water into wine, healing the sick, calming storms, and raising the dead. Even his opponents acknowledged these acts, fueling their hostility. Pontius Pilate described Jesus as a man of average height with a calm demeanor and a commanding presence. His hair was soft, light brown, and slightly wavy, framing a face of kindness and peace. His deep eyes, sometimes perceived as light brown or blue, reflected wisdom and compassion. His voice carried an almost magical energy that calmed even the most troubled hearts. Jesus' modest clothing reflected his humility, and his actions embodied patience, compassion, and humanity. His serene presence brought peace to those around him, and his words revealed profound truths in simple ways. Pilate's account paints Jesus as an extraordinary figure, transcending ordinary human qualities and leaving an indelible mark on those who encountered him.